Ladies and gentlemen, this is former WCW and TNA ring announcer David Penzer, also author of Sitting Ringside Volume 1, and you are watching and listening to TNA Cross the Line podcast.
TNA Wrestling, Cross the Line.
And we're back with bonus episode number 13 of the TNA Cross the Line podcast. I am Bob Colling Jr., and with me as always is Dallas Gridley. But more importantly than all that, we are joined by the author of Sitting Ringside and former WCW ring announcer and TNA ring announcer, David Penzer. Welcome to the show, David Penzer, the TNA Cross the Line podcast. Recently authored the Sitting Ringside with David Penzer. Tell us about why you decided to write this book.
Well, thanks for having me on the show. It came about in a strange way, and it certainly was never meant to be an autobiography in any way, shape, or form, but that's what it turned into. About a year and a half ago, I was cleaning out my desk in my office, and I found a whole big file of old WCW rare, never seen by the public formats, including the last Nitro format, which somehow has never been leaked online. There's a whole bunch of, there's 200 pages of formats as bonus material in this book. But originally, I didn't know what to do with it, so I took a picture of the front of one of the Saturday night, WCW Saturday nights, and I put it on Twitter. It's like, if anybody have any interest in this? And we went back and forth about ways that we could possibly, get it out there. And Guy Evans, who wrote the Nitro book, in my opinion, I'm not just saying this because he wrote my book, is the best wrestling writer out there today. Not taking away anything from anybody else, but he PM'd me on Twitter and said, "Hey, call me tomorrow," and he gave me his phone number, and I did. He said we should do a scrapbook. We could do all those formats and internal memos that nobody's ever seen, and then we could also, you could tell stories about, the main event. This was the main event of this Saturday night taping, and you remember, how the memories of their matches and the guys and stuff like that. So I said, all right. So we started doing it, and Guy started asking me about my story. And I thought he was just getting some background information, but about 3 months later, he said, "Yeah, we're going to make this an autobiography and a bonus material." And I said, "Well, you better be a pretty damn good writer." And he was he's better than a pretty damn good writer, and that's how it came about. People have asked me for years, "You're going to write your story," and I had no interest in doing it, but I found the right person, and I found the right bonus materials to bribe people into buying my story.
Well, it's actually kind of crazy because when I saw it too, like being a wrestling fan, you don't see the formats, you don't get to see that kind of stuff, and it's a peek behind the curtain that generally is like, really, it's not allowed. It's for the fans to see. So it definitely, for the smarter fans, it's a cool addition to it. And I got to say, too, I was talking to Bob before, I like, even on the back of the book, and one of the bonus pieces that you can get with it is the format from Thunder, where David Arquette won the title in Syracuse. And we actually live in Syracuse, so I think it's super cool and really cool piece.
And if you look at the finish of that match on the original format that I have, he wasn't supposed to win the world title.
Oh, wow.
There's a different finish on there. And so they changed it at the last minute. But whether it's wrestling or politics or TV or whatever, NFL, everybody likes to know how the sausage is made, and if you're a fan. And so this gives people, like you said, a peek behind the scenes on how the sausage is made a little bit. And also memories of growing up with the Monday Night Wars, for those who were privileged to see them. I know some younger people, and I don't know your guys' age, missed those. I remember when I first went to Impact during COVID, and but almost all the guys, except for the vets, the Trey Miguel's of the world and the Ace Austins, they just knew me from TNA. I was like, yeah, I was in the Monday Night Wars with WCW, and they're like, yeah, I didn't watch that, but I watched TNA. So it's funny how different age groups, people, remember you differently. And when Mike Tenay went in last year to the Hall of Fame, I told him, you watch, 90% of these guys are going to not remember you from WCW and just remember you from TNA. And he pulled me aside. He says, man, you were right about that.
That's so funny because I think you're talking to the two separate people here. I'm the TNA guy, and Bob is the Monday Night Wars guy.
Absolutely.
There you go. Well, I came to the right place then.
Yeah, you didn't.
Yeah, you got both ends of it. So to go along with the scrapbook aspect of your book, what are maybe other potential stories you have involving any kind of wrestlers from
there was
WCW?
one. If you go to I retweeted it. So if you go to @David Penzer on Twitter, Guy tweeted out a portion of my thoughts on the relationship, and I retweeted it between Roddy Piper and Hulk Hogan. And that's just, if somebody wants to see a glimpse of, and this is just one man's opinion. This is one man who sat out ringside with a tuxedo on, who kind of laid back and didn't get involved behind the scenes too much because I didn't want to, piss anybody off. But this is just one guy's observation. And, the truth could, somebody else's truth could be totally different. One of the things that's cool about this is like Charles Robinson is reading this book right now. Well, he went through a lot of this with me. So I'm really interested to get his take once he finishes reading it on what he agrees with, what he saw differently, because everybody sees things differently. And so there's just a lot of great stories. There's a whole chapter on the announcer, the incredible announce team that you'll never be able to get that much talent into announcers' dressing room again. We had Mean Gene Okerlund, Bobby the Brain Heenan, Dusty Rhodes, Tony Schiavone, Mike Tenay, Larry Zbyszko. It was, and I got to sit there and just listen to those guys for a couple hours before the show started, tell stories and rib each other. And, man, people pay to do stuff like that. And I got paid to do it, a couple times a week for years. So it's just a lot of my insight on all the things, to talk a lot about the end of WCW, how that went down, in my opinion, how I saw it and what my feelings were, not knowing what the future was going to hold after working so hard to live my dream. So there's a lot of cool behind the scenes stuff. I think there was a portion of the book that was released on slamwrestling.com. I think that's the website. I know it's Slam, but I don't know what the exact URL number. Is it URL number?
Address
is. But yeah. So don't want to give too much away. But yeah, it's everybody that's read it. I've not heard one person say, I really didn't enjoy it, and I kind of expected to, because my view of the world is not everybody's cup of tea, of the wrestling world. I'm assuming that there's going to be some Vince Russo fans that are going to be upset at me, but I just wrote how I felt honestly, and it wasn't anything personal, and I make that very clear. Nothing personal against Vince Russo. He was hired to do a job I don't think he was qualified for. So that's just my opinion. Some people may love him. That's cool. Everybody gets so tribal in wrestling these days.
Yeah.
It's like, even though I love Brett Lauderdale, he's a great guy. He's one of the first people to tell me he used to do my voice. And what an honor that is to hear people say that. And, doing me introducing the wrestlers, and he's a brilliant businessman, and you can see their success, but bring a light bulb out at a wrestling match and I'm done. It's just not my cup of tea. Doesn't mean I don't wish them well. Doesn't mean I don't hope they're successful. Doesn't mean there's not a group of people that like that. It's just not my cup of tea. So I don't watch it. I don't bury it. I just don't watch it. So, everybody's getting tribal in this social media age, and everybody just should root for wrestling because it's probably at its hottest point since the Monday Night Wars. So, I went through only having one company on a national level, and that was not fun. A lot of people were out of work. A lot of people, a lot bad. It was bad for the business. It was bad for the boys. It was bad for the guys. It was bad for management. And be careful. It's almost be careful what you root for, because it's not fun.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with that. There's way too much this side, that side. I think, both me and Bob are on Twitter, but both of us also don't, if there's something we don't like, we're not just like, fuck AEW, fuck WWE, whatever. That's just not, both of us aren't like that. Now, sometimes in a private text channel, you never know what's going to be said.
Sure.
But
I don't like everything I watch sometimes, and that's one of the reasons why I tend to DVR everything and then read the reviews of the shows, and then in my head I could figure out, okay, this is what I want to see, and this is what I don't really care about as much. I've always been, since I started watching wrestling at the age of 11 in 1977, and I turned on the TV for the first time and became and fell in love with something that I was honored to be a part of later on. But I always favored the promos and the angles, and maybe that's because, and so much of this, doing these interviews are almost like speaking to a shrink. You start to realize things. But if I think about it now, all the matches on Championship Wrestling from Florida back then were all squash matches. So it's like it was the angles and the promos you were waiting for, because all the matches were one-side matches. Now, during the Monday Night Wars, that totally got flipped on a dime. It went about how much money did you make to what your rating was. And it totally flipped the business from one side to the other. And, no longer mattered as much how much profit you made, how much the house drew. It mattered how much the rating was. And so I'm not going to sit there through a 3-hour Raw, nothing against Raw or even like a 2-hour Impact, and watch every match. I'll watch some of the matches that I think are that I think should be fun, and if it's something that I might not have any interest in, I'll just fast forward to it. But yeah, a lot of great talent, and I know the TNA Cross the Line podcast. A lot of great talent in TNA. I miss being there. It actually, in hindsight, was the best thing that ever happened to me in a lot of ways. But what a company. I'm just sad Scott's not there anymore.
I'm also, as a fan, very sad that Scott's not there. So. I can only imagine what he was like backstage, especially, even just seeing the revival of TNA and stuff like that, what he was doing. Obviously, I don't know him personally, but as a fan, I really enjoyed him.
Yeah, he was passionate, and he's I don't know what happened, and it's none of my business, but I've seen a lot of shocking things in the wrestling industry over 30 plus years. If you look at me as a fan, I saw next week, I think it's next week, that Dark Side of the Ring is doing an episode on Black Saturday, which was when turned on Georgia Championship Wrestling, and Vince McMahon was standing there, and there was no internet, and there was it was just a total shock. And so I'm interested to see that. But I mean, Scott being let go is one of the, if you'd have picked give me a list of 100 things that you predict were going to happen in the business, I'd say that was number 100 out of 1 to 100. I mean, but yeah, he got to give me, I don't know if you saw the footage, I released it recently, but he was so great. My last show there, he called me in the ring unbeknownst to me. The ring was surrounded by wrestlers and talent, and handed me a plaque. And I kid around and say that might have been the last decision he ever made in Impact Wrestling. But I'm sure that's not true. But yeah, that was such an honor, and I've known Scott 30 years, and whatever he decides to do moving forward, I wish the best for him. I'm always there for him. They call you, I'm a Paul Heyman guy. I guess I'm a Scott D'Amore guy.
That's what I like to hear.
Nothing against Heyman. Nothing against Heyman, by the way.
Of course. How did you originally get involved with TNA in early 2006?
Well, it's interesting. I had a company that did airbrush tattoos on zoos, aquariums, cruise ships. It was a pretty successful business until 2008, when the economy collapsed and the housing market tanked. And so I was doing that, and really kind of look wrestling behind. I was running a company, that had 50 people working for it, maybe not 50, but close. And so I had my hands full. And Jeff called me one time. I'll never forget. I was driving my kids to a bowling alley to go to a birthday party. And Jeff called me and he said, Penzer? I said, yeah. He said, how you doing? I said, good. He said, what are you doing next week? And I said, well, I was part owner. If I owned the whole thing, I would be retired right now, but too many partners. But unfortunately, I needed the partners to get the connections to get where we finally got. But then, of course, you have to split the money so many ways. But that's a whole different story. That'll be in volume 2, I guess. Maybe not. But he said, how'd you like to come ring announce on Monday? And I said, all right, what's the deal? And he said, well, I want to be clear with you. He said, Shane Douglas is doing our backstage backstage announcer role, the Gene Okerlund. Jeremy Borash is our ring announcer. Shane has to go away for about a month. And so we're going to move Jeremy up to to backstage announcer, and we're going to have you come in and do ring announcing, but only probably for like 1 or 2 shows. He said, as soon as JB is our ring announcer, I just want to be clear about that. As soon as he goes back to ring announcing, we're not going to use you at that moment. And I said, all right, so I was like a sub. And so 6 years later, I was still there. Thank God that JB was so good at doing the backstage stuff that they kept him there. And so it was a hell of a run. I had a couple other runs in between, short runs, but that was the main one. And then this last one during COVID, which was bizarre in so many ways, but had fun and got to really appreciate wrestling and wrestling fans again, because when they're not there in an arena, you could roll your eyes at certain chants or something like that. But at the end of the day, when you're doing professional wrestling in an empty arena, you would welcome any chant, no matter how eye rolling it might be. So it was a great experience to make me appreciate the business again and the fans again, and being back on the road in front of fans again. And, like I said, it ended up being working out that I'm no longer there for a lot of reasons, but I had a blast.
Now, in our format is we do watch alongs. We've been watching TNA from day one, and we're in the middle of 06 right now. But when we got to Against All Odds is when you technically made the debut. You weren't actively shown on camera, and in the Observer they were saying that it was because they didn't want to give off too much of a WCW vibe. Were you aware of that direction?
I was told by Jeff that night that I wasn't going to be in the ring for these tapings. I never asked why, but I was hot about it. And I made a rookie mistake for somebody that's been around the business that long. And I super sold it over a period of days that I was annoyed. And so I think what started off is maybe not wanting, because I was only going to be there for a couple of weeks, so not wanting to confuse the fans by having me on camera, became an ongoing rib to just not have me in the ring, because A, nobody noticed, and B, it pissed me off. It annoyed me. Now after a while, it didn't annoy me anymore. It was actually refreshing, not to have to get in and out of the ring every segment. But like I said, combination of it was going to be short term, so why bother? And then when it wasn't short term, Penzer's so hot about it, so we're just going to keep doing it just to piss him off, because that's basically how the wrestling business goes, especially before the internet and social media, is you just found ways to aggravate the other guys to pass the time.
Yeah, because I think when we were watching this show, it took us a couple of matches, and we were like, wait a minute, that's David Penzer that was making the ring announcing. Then it took us probably 2 or 3 matches to actually realize it.
Yeah, I oversold it. Rookie mistake. Probably if once they figured out that JB was so good doing the backstage interviewing, they'd have moved me to the ring if I hadn't said anything. But so that's fine. I got absolutely no hard feelings. We laugh about it to this day. So it was kind of liberating after I got over myself. Like I said, just to be outside the ring, and I did it next to Mike and Don, so I got to hear their call. and become really good friends with them. So, you know, after a while, I liked the idea, but at the beginning, my ego took it a little hard.
Yeah, I think that's understandable. But you know, at least pandemic COVID run, and after the pandemic, at least they did you right, and they had you in the ring and calling it
for the main events, for the in-ring main events.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I'm glad for Jade. I knew 6 months before that I was going to be finishing up and handing the mic to her. I took a lot of pride in doing that. You know, not often do people get chances to you know, hand off a microphone to somebody else and you know, maybe impart a little wisdom into what I did that she could, you know, make her own. And you know, the funny thing is, and this is why Scott's such a great guy, they didn't have to fly me to Toronto to do that. My replacement was right there. You know, they had the class to do that, so I could officially pass the microphone. Most companies wouldn't have done that. They'd have just kept me home, and all of a sudden, Jade would have been on TV. So it was a cool opportunity, and to be able to give back a little bit. And I'm very proud of her. She's doing great, and I think it was the right move. I like her being in the ring, and I like, you know, all the time, and it gives the show a younger vibe for sure. So so yeah, no hard feelings at all. And I appreciate the fact that I was given a heads up, because most people would just say, hey, you know, you're done after tonight. But he gave me a heads up.
Now, when you first got to TNA, did you sense like any kind of similarities to WCW at all in terms of vibe, or was it just a completely different atmosphere?
Not really. It was a different atmosphere. You know, it was funny being away for a while and then coming back, but it was more laid back. Now, you know, there's always tension and there's always disagreements and stuff like that. It was definitely more laid back. I think that a lot of the people in the wrestling business, on both sides, management and talent, learn that, you know, if you don't try to make this work, it might go away and you might not have that job anymore. So while it's always a little, could be a little tense at times, I think that that, you know, people heeded the warning and learned from history a little bit. And I definitely was much more laid back. And, you know, I got the opportunity. There was a conference room that we would have the production meeting in, and that's where Mike and Don would hang out during the day. And Jim Cornette would come in and tell stories, and Kevin Nash would come in and tell stories, and Bubba Ray would come in and tell stories. And, you know, I was in on all that, and I became like the junior member of the group. And that was some of the fun times I've ever had in the business. And, you know, as much fun as it was, you know, listening to Bobby Heenan and Gene Okerlund and those guys tell their stories, it was just entertaining to hear Jim Cornette and his crazy stuff. And Kevin Nash, I don't know if you've ever heard him, but he has an incredible sense of humor. Incredible sense of humor, very dry, but really funny. And, you know, some of the best memories I have were sitting around that conference room with those guys. And I had to remind myself I was getting paid for it, and they paid me pretty good. I can't complain.
That's awesome. When you sat in on those like production meetings and stuff like that, did you ever get to help contribute to any angles or anything like that? Or were you just kind of helping out with the production itself?
Not in TNA. I had nothing to do with creative. At the end of WCW, I did. I was like a junior member of the creative team. I just saw Shane Helms posted a video of that triple ladder, triple threat match that opened Starrcade. That match was my I talk about it in detail in the book. It was my idea, and they went along with it, and the guys worked their butt off to make it memorable. And I think it ended up being like the best match on that Starrcade. And so I just recently retweeted that. But yeah, you know, a few different things. You know, I was really big behind AJ Styles getting a push in WCW. Him and I think Air Paris were going to be, they were a tag team, and I think they were going to be given a run if we didn't go out of business with the junior tag team titles, I think it was called. That I think Kidman and Rey Mysterio ended up winning on the last Nitro. I may be wrong, but yeah, I was pushing for those guys, and just kind of minding my own business, but throwing out an idea here or there and taking everything in. You'll never learn if you just think. You have to take everything in and see what people liked and people didn't like, and then remember that so you didn't pitch something like that again, or you pitched it in a different way. So it was interesting. It was a fun time.
Oh,
But no, never in TNA, never in Impact. I never had to do with any of the booking at all throughout my entire run.
So in TNA you didn't have anything to do creatively. So that would mean that the angle where you got beat up by Kurt Angle was not your idea in 2008.
No, that was not my idea. Yeah, that was interesting. I don't know if you've seen the after picture, but I just came up on my memories on Facebook. I look like the Elephant Man.
Oh wow.
Kurt apologized and they gave me a bonus. The company did, but Kurt, it said to me, he said, I was afraid you weren't going to be, we didn't have much time to go over it. And he said, I was afraid you weren't going to know how to sell it. So I laid it in a little bit. Well, that's what he did. But Kurt laying it in a little bit to me, to a non-athlete like me, is, slamming the hell out of you with his forearm. And then, later on, he took off one of my shoes and started hitting me over the head. And he told me how to hold my hands over my head when I was on my stomach. But he overshot one of the arms and got me right in the other cheek. So, he apologized and we laugh about it to this day, but I'm not quite sure if the same thing happened again. He wouldn't do anything different. He was, serious about, he's serious about his stuff. And, at the end of the day, it healed, and, it's a fun story to tell and laugh about and send that picture out, show my friends that aren't wrestling fans that get horrified. But no hard feelings. But yeah, he might say differently, but I honestly think with that same situation of facts, he probably would have laid it in. That's just Kurt. You got to respect that.
Yeah. I know I want to be respectful of your time here. So we're running down. I have one pretty important question for you. So
okay.
The Sitting Ringside, it's volume 1. It looks like you cover a lot of WCW in it. Do we think that there may be a volume 2 that might cover some of your TNA run?
There is a volume 2 coming out in October. It will cover the XWF in depth, company that most people don't know a lot about because few people lived it. But a lot of bonus material never before seen, a lot of stories. I was pretty intimately involved with every facet of that company. As far as even where the storylines were going, if we got picked up for TV, then we're going to get into Impact Wrestling, and then TNA, and then Impact Wrestling, and a little, my time is spending 45 days in a tour bus with Roddy Piper as his tour manager, crisscrossing the country. So we'll talk about stuff like that, but unfortunately, I'm sure we'll have to talk about the Benoit thing because I was very close to it, and that's a shame that I have to waste energy on that. But it's my story, so I guess I should tell it. So that'll be what volume 2 is, and I don't expect there to be volume 3, but this crazy business and the ride I've been on, who freaking knows?
Yeah, definitely. No, that's really awesome. Bob, did you have anything else?
Well, this one final TNA question. Did you at any point think that there was a breakthrough moment where it was like, oh, wow, TNA is a real competitor? And then in contrast, was there ever a moment where you're like, well, we really fumbled something special here?
No, not really. A particular point. And I'll elaborate certainly way more in the book, but the short version of what I saw in TNA in my initial run was if we could just go head to head with WWE, and if we could get on television that pays us, then they got on television and paid them. All right, if we could just establish an audience, okay, we established an audience, 1.5 million people, which these days is a freaking great audience. If we could just go head to head like Nitro did, and then it was like, if we could just go head to head live like Nitro did. And then they got there and it didn't work. And I don't think they had a plan B. I think they honestly thought, and history showed that it worked once. Why wouldn't it work again? You had Flair, you had Hogan, you had young guys, you got AJ Styles, the same sort of formula. You have nostalgia and X. The only thing different was cruiserweights and to X division, and you got brawlers like Abyss and Raven. I mean, so why shouldn't it happen again? But it just didn't. And I think that so that's a little preview of Volume 2. I'll get into much more detail of that, but and name specific things and people. But yeah, I think that's where things sort of went south, and they had to really refine their place in the business, and they finally did do that. But it took some time.
Yeah. And then, do you have any favorite match that you were able to ring announce between WCW and TNA?
Man, I can't pick just one. I know that's a cop out, man. It's so many good matches. The last match that I ring announced on Impact, not the pay-per-view, but the Impact show that airs on Thursdays, was Josh Alexander versus Will Ospreay, man. I'm not saying that's the best match I ever ring announced, but that was a hell of a match. That's it. I figured if that's how I'm going out on TV, man, I'm going out with two of the most talented in the world right now. Again, I'm like I was like the 11-year-old that turned on Championship Wrestling from Florida, and fell in love with something. And I still love the business. I still am enamored by it. I still like the angles and the promos more than the matches, but I like some of the matches. There's just so much content out there that if you sit out there and watch everything that was available right now, and you watch you wouldn't be able to do anything else. So I pick and choose. Big Bloodline fan, but stumbled on that by accident. That had a viral video where Jey Uso couldn't stop laughing, and everybody else started laughing, and so I hadn't watched WWE in years. I wasn't even DVRing it, and so I DVR'd SmackDown that next week, and I was like, let's see, let's see if they try to make, because some of the boys in the old days would have tried to make them laugh again. You know what I mean? Probably that didn't happen, because it's a different business. But so I thought, I'm gonna tune in, and I've probably seen every Bloodline skit and match since that time, and it's just incredible run. They talk about the NWO, and that changed the entire business. But to keep the Bloodline on top for 4 years, think about it, 4 years, you have to come up with interesting storylines and that draw money, that keep viewers, and that's almost impossible to do that. 52 weeks a year, 4 years, one group is still keeping people's attention. I don't know that that's ever been done before, and quite frankly, I don't know that it ever will be done before. And that's probably a testament to Triple H and Paul Heyman as a team.
Oh yeah, no, I think that's definitely true. It's I don't personally watch WWE a lot, but even some of that stuff is definitely interesting. And I definitely saw the clip of them laughing, which is pretty good.
Yeah. So anyway, before y'all, I could stay on a little bit longer, but I do want to point people in the direction of davidpenzerbook.com, all one word, davidpenzerbook.com. You could also get it on Amazon. If you go to davidpenzerbook.com, there's some special bundles that you might be interested in, where you get certain things in addition to the book. So if you just want the book, it's the same price and free shipping on both of those sites. So let us know what you think. Leave a review, and like I said, I could answer some more questions, but I wanted to get that in before you hung up on me.
No. You beat me. You beat me to it. I was about to do the plug.
There you go. See,
yeah, I was
smart,
about to. No, that's good. I'm totally cool with you plugging it. And I'll add too, GuyEvansBooks.com was what I got pulled up here in front of me. And you can get this book signed. You can get it with a Nitro format that's signed. There's a hardcover edition signed. There's all different bundles. You can get a Zoom call with David and with Guy Evans. So there's so many options here, which is really great. And I think this is, I'm not a big reader personally, but this book definitely piqued my interest because of that extra stuff you're adding into there, and the fact that you saw it all. You were the guy who was sitting there during all of it. So I think it is definitely a different perspective than most people end up being able to write about.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And just to be clear, David Penzer book goes to .com, goes to GuyEvansBook.com.
Oh.
So it doesn't really matter which one you choose. You're going to go to the same place.
Even better. Cool.
Yeah,
And
I'm probably going to be getting the second bundle so I can get that Syracuse sheet.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, and I mean, I tell people, even if you just get the one with the last Nitro, I've often thought now that, this is out and, it's not a secret anymore, that, I'd love to go if I ever got booked or ended up at like a WrestleCon or a WrestleCade or whatever they, StarCast, whatever, I'd love to get the last page of that last Nitro format signed by Sting and Ric Flair. You could frame that sucker, hang it up in your office, and that's a piece of history, man. The autograph, the two guys that did the last match in the history of Monday Nitro. So, that's something to think about. Hopefully, I don't have to pay the money to get them to autograph it that other people do. If I did, I still think it would be worth the money.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's now you got me getting the itch here. I'm a big autograph guy too. So.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well,
yeah, hey, I mean, I hope this could be a new form of memorabilia that people could, I know they have books that have, encyclopedias of wrestling that people like to get as many people to sign. Maybe we could get the last Nitro or a bunch of these formats. You could even get Vince Russo to sign the one where he won the world title.
That's right.
Yeah. If that's something that you're interested in, I'm sure Vince would love to do it.
I'm sure he would. Cool. Well, we really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us and to dip into the TNA stuff and give us a little teaser on Volume 2 even, which was really great. If you guys don't already follow David Penzer on Twitter, it's at David Penzer. Very easy to remember.
Simple.
I like it. And at WCW Nitro Book is where Guy Evans posts all sorts of great stuff about sitting ringside with David Penzer and the WCW Nitro Book.
Yeah, and I can't wait to see this docuseries about Nitro that's coming out in beginning of June. Yeah. And I'm really interested. I had talked to those people, and they talked about bringing me up to give give my thoughts on some stuff. But at the end of the day, budgetary wise, they had to make some important decisions. And when you have to pick between Kevin Nash and David Penzer, it's a real easy decision. So, but we talked about it, and I'm really excited to see it.
Yeah, no, I think that should be good. I'm excited that it's going to be a non-WWE whitewashed version of it, and hopefully it won't be as the dramatics that they add into it. So,
well, I saw the promo for it yesterday, and they hinted this huge conspiracy theory, and I don't even really know what they're hinting at. Who killed WCW? I mean, the answer to that question is a lot of people aided it. But at the end of the day, it was Ted Turner losing his power. Once Ted Turner only owned 33 1/3% of the company anymore, and somebody else had a bigger voting share, they got rid of it. They never wanted it to start with. If it wasn't for Ted, they never would have taken it. They hated it. They never wanted it. Even when it was making a ton of money, hundreds of $1 million a year, they never wanted it. They were embarrassed by it. So I didn't know it at the time, and a lot of it was washed out in Guy's work and then conversations I had later on with Eric and other people, Kevin Sullivan, people like that, who, by the way, writes the foreword to the book. But it was absolutely, at the end of the day, it was the suits at Turner canceled the show. So I don't know what they're alluding to. It'll be interesting. I'm ready to watch and find out. Looking forward to it.
Yeah. No, yeah, I'm definitely looking for that
as well.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, like I said, thanks again. We really appreciate it, and we're definitely looking forward to this book. And I hope a lot of people are going to grab it, and hopefully get Sting and Ric Flair to sign that Nitro format, because now I got the itch for that.
There you go. And that's why I said it.
now I got the itch.
There you go. Now, that would be a cool piece of memorabilia for sure.
Absolutely.
I never even thought of it like that.
So
no, right.
Even if you see Arquette, have him sign where he became world champion. I mean, that's some cool history. So anyway, thanks for the time, guys. I really appreciate it. Hopefully come back sometime. Maybe for book 2, we could get more TNA centric, and be sure to follow me on Twitter if you don't, and no politics, no bullshit. We just talk about wrestling and fun stuff and nothing controversial, so you don't have to worry about that. I've only blocked one person, and that was because they dared me to block him, and I said okay. And then I had to ask my son how to block somebody on Twitter because I had no idea how to do it. So
that's awesome.
And that person, by the way, was Chris Cruz.
Oh wow!
Chris Cruz, man, he lost his mind. I don't know what happened to him.
Yeah, no, he did.
Yeah, it sounds like it. Yeah.
So the only person I've ever blocked on Facebook, the only person I've ever blocked on Twitter. I couldn't take the drama anymore. You know, first it was fun for a little while to go back and forth with them, and then it got personal. And when it got personal, then it's as your podcast said, then it crossed the line.
That's right. Yeah, totally.
So, all right, little bit of tidbit of info that I don't know that I've ever told anybody before. So you got the scoop.
Hey,
I like it.
Yeah, perfect.
Thanks so much.
All right, thank you guys. I appreciate it.
Of course.
Thank you. Have a great night.
You too.
All right, Dallas. That was quite the chat with the legendary David Penzer, learning quite a bit about his history with WCW and getting some insider details regarding some TNA happenings, and of course his only blockage of Mr. Chris Cruz, who has, I think, gone clinically insane. Allegedly, I don't want to get sued.
Right. Yeah, dude, we got some scoops there, did we not? That was a really great interview, and I'm pretty excited about this book. And I'm not a big book guy, and I like I said a couple times there, the formats, man. When you see that stuff pop up online, that stuff is cool. So I'm not just doing like cheap plugs here. I think it's actually cool shit. So I think it's definitely it's a different take on a wrestling book, and I think that's what interests me most about it.
Well, Dallas, you know I am a wrestling book guy.
I see the stack.
I have a whole bookcase here filled with books. Now, have I read them all? No, but I have them, so that counts for something. And like I told David Penzer, I think I have to get. I'm getting the book regardless, but I think I need to get it with the Syracuse format and with like the Russo stuff. I mean, I'm a sucker for this stuff. I mean, I saw like there was a video of like going through some of the pages or whatever, and it's like a whole bunch of like Saturday night formats and like,
dude, that's like your thing,
worldwides, and it's like, oh my god, I have to do it. What am I doing with my life?
Yeah, no,
I think like notes on it too, so it's like, okay.
Oh,
like,
really?
Yeah, it looked like there was some handwritten notes on there too. So they might have been changing things around, like you said. So
that's cool. Yeah, I think it's really cool, and like we just said, I think it was a really good conversation. We got to talk about, of course, TNA. That's what we focus on here on the TNA Crossline podcast. And I don't know. It's nice to hear the fond memories he has with TNA and in Impact at the later time there. And I'm glad that he likes Scott D'Amore, and is also sad that Scott D'Amore was gone, because I didn't want to hear anything else than that.
Right. It is a bump. Scott's
really great. Well, this is our third interview, Bob. We've interviewed a few people. If you guys haven't checked those out, we interviewed Goldilocks, Wildcat Chris Harris, which is still a really great interview, and now David Penzer. So check those other ones out in the archive if you have not heard them. And if you happen to be new, if this is your first time listening, we do watch alongs, like Bob mentioned during the show. We've been covering TNA since the beginning, and coming up soon is Sacrifice. Very soon, couple weeks, a week or two. I gotta double check the calendar here, but it's coming up.
I just want to point out that there have been many TNA podcasts that tried starting from the beginning, and they have ended up stopping for whatever reason. Maybe they reached a time frame that they didn't want to do anymore. But Dallas and I don't know if we're the longest running, but we are the most dedicated.
And to think that we almost got the stopping point at episode 3, we're doing pretty good.
Yes.
Because that tag team tournament was brutal.
Yes.
Brutal.
And that was going on 4 years ago.
Dude, we're killing it, man. We're
roughly.
Yeah, mid 2006 here. We're covering some really, really great stuff. And I hope people are along the ride for us. And if you happen to be new, you're not following us yet, we are on all the socials. You can follow us on Twitter at Cross the Line TNA, at TNA Cross the Line Pod on Facebook. It's also Cross the Line TNA on Instagram if you do the gram. As well as we do have a Pro Wrestling Tees store, prowrestlingtees.com/Cross the Line TNA. I think that covers all of that. But please follow us wherever you listen to your podcast. And if you're really feeling good, leave us a review. We'd really appreciate that. That would help us out a lot.
Yes, I remember we got a review from Jeff Jarrett's on-screen lawyer.
Yeah, we did. Yeah, we did.
And, we never heard from him because we would love to have him on the show, but we've yet to
don't know.
hear back.
We don't know how to get a hold of him. It was a review, but there's no contact information. I don't know if he's on Twitter. Man, the things that you wish you could do.
Yep. So if you're listening,
that's right.
Get in contact with us.
Get in contact with us. And if you're just a listener, and hey, if there's someone in TNA alum that you want us to interview, add us. At them. Send us a DM. Give us some ideas. We do have some couple that we are there's some big ones that we want to score. But there's other ones that
afraid to send the DM.
We gotta just send the DM. But there's other ones that I think we're definitely gonna get. So this is not the last interview. I know it's been a while since the Wildcat one. And don't worry, there's gonna be a part 2 to that too eventually. So we have a lot of great stuff, including, of course, these watch-alongs in the pipeline.
Yeah, I will say a little peek behind the curtain. Every time that we talk to any kind of TNA alum, I do get nervous at the start. But then as soon as we start talking, it's like, oh, hey, I'm not 6 years old anymore. I'm a 35-year-old male. And I can have an adult conversation with another adult about pro wrestling.
Well, and it helps, too, when you talk to these guys. Yes, they are in the business. They're wrestlers, they're announcers, they're managers.
They're people.
But they're people and they're fans.
Right.
And I think
literally everything that David Penzer was saying about storytelling and stuff like that, I was just thinking to myself, I was like, you know what? This is WWF 92. It's all, the TV is all just storyline.
Dude, I saw you. Obviously, our listeners won't see it, but you were like, yes. Yes. you were eating that line up.
Yeah, because that's literally all it is on the TV, is just promoting the live events. You don't really get the feature matches like you mentioned, like you would end up getting on the Monday Night Wars, because at that point it was all about ratings, and who cares about filling up a 5,000 seat arena in Idaho,
right?
When you can get millions of people. So, all right. Well, just for a time frame here in terms of release, our next recording is going to be Sacrifice. David Penzer will be ring announcing, so we'll hear his lovely voice for about 3 hours. And don't forget, it's Full Metal Mayhem. It's Christian Cage. It's Abyss. And also Samoa Joe's teaming up with Sting to take on Jarrett and Scott Steiner, plus a whole lot more. So be sure to join us for when we get to Sacrifice. But until then.
No, you're good. Sorry, I know I just threw Bob off. I was saying 2 weeks. It's 2 weeks. 2
weeks. I thought you were doing a peace sign. I was like, what the fuck are you doing?
Well, that's
2 weeks away. Sacrifice.
I think. 2 weeks. May 14th.
May 14th is when.
Although, actually, it's going to be more like a week when this episode. I'm sorry.
Damn it, a week.
I'm looking at I was looking at March, Bob. I'm sorry. It's May.
Edit all this out. Edit this out, Dallas. You got to do a whole lot of editing anyway, so just edit.
I will consider when I say.
Just leave it then.
Nah, we like it raw, baby.
Yeah, that's
raw.
Right, fuck that, man. We love the bloopers. All right, May 14th, which is about a week from when you're listening to this. Full Metal Mayhem. Steiner, Jarrett against Joe and Sting, plus a whole lot freaking more. So be sure to join us. Until then, for Dallas Gridley, I am Bob Colling Jr., and this has been the TNA Cross the Line podcast.